You are listening to the Embrace the Mud podcast, where we discuss all things related to healthy, joyful, and life-giving relationships. Why focus on relationships? Because the quality of our intimate partnerships and close connections influences our health, happiness, and longevity more than anything else in our lives. Relationships matter a lot, so together, let's jump into the mud, aka our messy relationships, pull some weeds, plant some seeds, and create an enriching environment where strong relationships can take root. I am your grateful host, Dara Posner. I am a relational disaster working toward relational mastery. I am also a positive psychology coach, a relational mindset coach, a blogger, and now a podcaster. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Embrace the Mud podcast, where we discuss all things related to healthy, joyful, life-giving relationships. If you are a fan of this podcast, please subscribe, follow, like, review, and share. Your engagement in this way is crucial to the success of the podcast, and I appreciate you taking just a few seconds to support my mission, which is to help people like you flourish in life and love. Today on the Embrace the Mud podcast, we are continuing with a new series, Relational Weeds, the behaviors and relationships that cause disconnection and prevent your relationship from fully blossoming and flourishing. Today, we're talking about criticism. Criticism is one of the four horsemen, a group of 4 negative behaviors determined by doctors John and Julie Gottman to be particularly destructive to couples. And these are the behaviors that they repeatedly saw happening in relationships that would eventually fail. So what is criticism? Why does it hurt your relationship? And how can you communicate without criticizing? That's what we're talking about today. So let's dive in. Every now and again in relationships, things happen, choices are made, we find ourselves in situations that just are really displeasing to us, and we want to address it, right? We want to make a complaint, and rightfully so. There's no issue at all with finding yourself in a place, in a relationship, where there's cause for complaint, and you want to address whatever the issue is. The problem arises when, instead of making a complaint, we decide to criticize. What is the difference? When we're complaining, we're addressing a specific action, an action that didn't go well or turn out well, and we're really focusing on what happened. With a criticism, we are making a negative judgment about the other person. It could be about their personality or their character, but the focus isn't on what happened. It's really focused on what we think is wrong with the other person. And so why do we do this? Why do we sort of go after the person instead of really just focus on the action? Well, we've essentially sort of just made up our minds that it's really important to hold someone responsible for what's gone wrong. Or we really want to change someone's behavior. And so we want to address what's wrong with that person so that hopefully the behavior will change. And, we tell ourselves, you know what, I'm holding other people accountable. This is just how it is. I'm just saying how it is. But unfortunately, that doesn't, criticizing our partner in particular, does not bear the fruit that we would assume it would. Right? Why? Because when a person feels criticized, when they feel attacked, when they feel like their character or personality is being attacked, their automatic response is to become defensive, right? They're not really listening. They're not really hearing. They're not open to finding solutions because now they want to just defend themselves, right? And rightfully so. And so it's not productive, right? That's what these relational weeds really have in common, is that they're just not productive. They don't create the solutions and the outcomes that we ultimately really would like to have happen. And they certainly don't breed connection and trust in the relationship. They do the opposite of all of that. They really just create this huge detour and, additional problems along the way. And so criticism is one of those choices we'll make sometimes that we'll convince ourselves is appropriate when really it never truly is. we can instead choose to become a skillful complainer. So what would a skillful complaint sound like in comparison to a criticism? A complaint might sound like, I'm really frustrated because I ended up doing the dishes when I came downstairs this morning. You and I have an agreement that if I cook, you do the dishes and you do them before we go to bed. That's a complaint, right? It focuses on how you feel. It's very I-oriented, and then it kind of speaks to the facts. I'm feeling frustrated. This is my experience. This is our agreement. End, right? A criticism would sound like, I'm so frustrated because I had to do the dishes this morning. You are so unreliable. We have these agreements and you just can't seem to keep them, right? It's really attacking the other person, their character, their inability to follow through or keep a promise. And of course, if you find yourself in a situation where there's like a chronic issue around something like that, you can still complain. You could still say, this is the third time this week that I've woken up and had to do the dishes first thing in the morning. We have this agreement where if I cook, you clean up. What can we do about this? It doesn't seem to be working. So there's no attack. There's no putting anybody down. There's no one's being critical, right? We're really just focusing on, this is what's happening. Here's the impact on me. Let's look for a solution and let's do it together. Right. And so that can be really, really hard to do when we're taking things very personally. So my opinion is the reason why we criticize instead of complain a lot of times is we really take the other person's behavior personally. Underneath, we're telling ourselves a story of like, well, they're not honoring this agreement because they don't respect me. Right. They're not honoring this agreement because they don't really care if my day has to start by cleaning up the kitchen, right? So we tell ourselves stories about the other person that are negative, and then that feeds that sort of justification that enables us to then kind of attack them and go after them. So one of the steps, if we are someone who has a habit of criticizing, is to really check ourselves on those stories, because one of the really important skills or abilities that we have to be able to cultivate in a relationship is making positive assumptions about our partner, especially when things go wrong. So what could be happening here, right? Making assumptions that, it has nothing to do with us. Maybe they have a lot on their mind, oh yes, they have this new project at work that has been, really challenging for them, and giving them the benefit of the doubt, making that generous assumption. If we can get into a headspace that has, at least a neutrality, if not like a positive assumption, that it could be something else. It's not that they are, just a careless person who doesn't really love us and who isn't thinking about us and who isn't considerate. Then we'll have a much, much easier time complaining instead of criticizing. What if you're the person who is on the receiving end of criticism? How can you sort of, deal with that? That, could be really, really hard because you do want to defend yourself, right? But again, being defensive, which we'll talk about in a later relational weeds episode, is one of the four horsemen. It is also a destructive habit. So you can choose not to be defensive. You can, in the moment, look for the deeper need that the person has and really just, address it from that perspective. And then later, once you've sort of gotten beyond that conversation, say, when you're dissatisfied with something, I want to hear about it. I want to do better for you. I really want you to know that I care deeply about your experience. And it would really, really help me hear you if when you come to me, you really speak from a place of how you feel and what's happening for you without criticizing me personally. That really hurts. It really hurts, makes me feel disconnected from you. I understand that you're upset and frustrated. And I also am just asking for you to be mindful about this because I do want to hear what bothers and frustrates you. And I do want to make choices that avoid creating that experience in you. So I hope this helps. I hope that, just listening to this today could give you, some space and it can be a catalyst for you to reflect on your own behavior in conflict. Do you have a tendency toward criticism? Are you good at complaining? And complaints sometimes, I'll share with you one tiny little recipe. If you're just starting out with okay, I do have this ingrained habit of criticism and I want to complain instead, try this. Here's a little template, if you will. I notice and I prefer. Okay, so that's a way to make sure there's no criticism, there's no blame. It's just a very clear-cut complaint, which is, hey, I noticed that after you drink your coffee in the morning, you leave your mug on the countertop. I would prefer that when you finish your coffee, you just put the mug in the dishwasher. I notice, I prefer. So think of some things that have been frustrating you, maybe in your life or a relationship right now, and see if you can use that model to practice what it is that you want to convey and communicate, and give it a try. See how it goes. All right, that's all I have for you today. I hope you found that helpful. I will be back here tomorrow with another relational weed. Still haven't decided what it's going to be. I'm enjoying this being on the fly these days. But in the meantime, please remember, you are wired for love and connection. You are capable of love and connection. You are worthy of love and connection.